Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce the release of my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. If you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level in 2021, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Ana Maria Vasquez here with me on the show. Ana is a multi-sensory animal and nature intuitive, shamanic practitioner, as well as author of the Common Sentience book series. As a natural energy reader, she lifts the veil between what's occurring in the physical world and the energetic patterns behind it. Hello, Ana. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be a great time.
Yeah, what a great lane that you are in. The work that you do, such a cool, such a cool thing to sort of delve deeply into. I just read, I'm getting ahead of my cliche opening question, but I'll just say it when I'm thinking of it. Speaking of Ana, I just read the book Anastasia. Are you familiar with this book?
I am.
And it's really, she's like super tuned into nature in Russia, and like it's very mystical. I just finished that book actually, and have a cool synchronicity with it. But before I get too excited, let me back up and get my cliche opener out of the way. It is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I start with, I talk to trees and they talk back to me. At that point, I don't need to say anything else because the conversation, the 10 floors is going to go really, really quickly. And the most important thing is it's great that I can do it, but you can do it too, because as a human, you're wired for this stuff, which speaks to the book you just read too. We're inherently wired for it.
I'm getting chills because that book is Anastasia, right? You're Ana, and my ex-partner Ana went to a transformational festival with me years ago. I can't remember which one. We went to a lot, and she did a workshop to connect with a tree. Maybe you were there and you were the one who taught the workshop. Who knows? But she did this workshop. She connected with the tree and got a name. And then everyone went to share their stories afterwards. Like, what was your experience? And some other woman got up and said, "I connected with the tree and this is the name that I got." And it was the same name. Like, she said it was just the wildest experience. I haven't thought of that in years until literally right now when here's Ana, talking to trees.
I love those little cosmic dominoes.
Oh man, we get a lot of them around here. Let me tell you. Wow. So such a cool thing.
You know what? That's the point. If I go through my day and I go too long without a magical experience, I'm out of alignment. I gotta come back to my center. And for me, that's getting outside. That's connecting with the trees, connecting with the animals, the rocks. So that's how it should be. We should be having these mystical experiences. Shouldn't be one-offs, when we go to a meditation retreat or something. This should be a part of our everyday experience.
Yeah, I agree with you fully. It's like, I feel like when we're in alignment, this sort of stuff opens up, so much more. And I've noticed if I'm stressed and anxious and, not in alignment, the synchronicity and the spiritual breadcrumbs, kind of can dry up. And so, before we get too far down the rabbit hole, maybe you can share a little bit of your backstory and whatever feels, relevant to share how you ended up on the path that you're on.
Yeah, I grew up fairly normal, whatever normal is, but
Yeah,
it
quote
wasn't it
unquote.
wasn't yeah, quote unquote normal. I wouldn't have said that I was an animal communicator or a tree talker. In fact, when I was growing up, those weren't terms, right? Like we didn't talk about that. I
Yep.
didn't know of anybody like that in my neighborhood or the circles that we ran in. But I had a profound connection to animals and nature. And I had a very chaotic upbringing. And so I would go to the trees for protection and solace, right? Like things would get crazy in the house and I head out the door, go sit under a tree. What I learned later is that chaos in the house helped me tune in to energy, right? And then
Mm,
anyone listening knows when you have to listen to what the footsteps sound like or what the door closing sounds like so that you can mentally prepare yourself for what's going to happen next, you start to tune in to energy on another level. You can even
interesting.
feel it beforehand, before they even come home. And so that set me up divinely, those experiences. So flash forward many decades later, and I'm going through a life tsunami, right? Where everything appears to fall apart. You lose the relationships, you lose the money, you lose the property. And there you are, like Job from the Bible, sitting on your pile of rubble, scratching yourself, right? Like, what the heck just happened?
Right, right.
And I thought, I did everything I was supposed to do. I followed all the rules, and here I sit. So now what, right? I got to rebuild my life, and what am I going to do? And I decided, if I can't build a life full of connection and deepness and richness and profoundness, then I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to dive into all those spiritual platitudes, and they're either real and it's something that I can harness and use in my life, or it's a bunch of malarkey just designed to help me get through it till I die, right? And I
Yeah.
thought, ugh, well, let me find out. So I took it into what I call my living laboratory, right? All of the law of attraction, all of the unity consciousness. And I got to tell you, it worked. And it worked in a profound way. And I had a teacher, a spiritual teacher, who knew my deepest heart's desire was to talk to animals and have them talk back, right? I talk to them all the time, but to have them talk back. And she gave me a homework assignment for 30 days to go out and connect with a tree, the
Mm.
same tree for 30 days. And I thought, okay, I was an outdoors girl. That wasn't going to be an issue. And I found the first time I went out and I put my hands on the tree, I got very self-conscious. And I was like, uh-oh, am I doing this right? Am I even touching the tree inappropriate? I don't know what
I'm officially a tree hugger.
right. Yeah. And I thought if somebody walked up, I don't know what I would say or what I would do. So I was honest with the tree. I said, you know what? I feel like an idiot. I feel like this is just busy work that my teacher gave me, all those things that our mind has to say about it. I said, but I'm going to do it. And if you can help me and take the little bit of faith I have amidst all the doubt, then I'm open. And so I followed it for the 30 days. And I have to tell you, for the first few weeks, nothing happened, right? Like nothing, no unicorns, no rainbows, no talking trees, nothing. But I was committed to doing it. And one day, somewhere around that fourth week, I was inside my home in my living room, and I was thinking and talking out loud, right? Like asking questions out loud. And I asked a question, and all of a sudden I heard audibly an answer.
Wow.
And even though I was inside, it felt like the voice was coming from outside where the tree was. And I was like, uh-oh, I
Hmm.
might have just lost it, right? Like I've been through a lot like this. Maybe I've gone over the deep end. And I said, is that you? And I heard yes. And I was like, well, this is weird. And I said, well, okay, if this is possible, my humanness kicked in right away. And I said, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I asked to talk to animals. I don't know what to do with a talking tree. And I heard a chuckle, right? And I was like, well, I'm glad one of us thinks this is funny. And the tree let me know, yeah, this is part of the process. This is a recalibration. The animals are coming. So then right away, I was able to go into a million questions of the tree and questions that I could verify the answers to, right? So I wasn't just some crazy chick out in the woods talking to this tree. I was asking questions that I could go find answers for. And the first couple were very simple, like, well, what's your name? Like, what can I call you? And she said, well, you can call me Ruby. And I thought, okay, that's fine. And I said, well, what kind of tree are you? At this point, I really didn't know that much about tree identification. I knew it was a pine, and that was about it.
Right.
Red pine. And I thought, red pine Ruby, that's a little too on the nose, right? Like, I'm clearly making this up. So I got a tree identification book, and a friend who was a great outdoors person, sure enough, it was a red pine. And so I kept going with it. And again, getting answers that I could verify. And sure enough, within 6 weeks, the animals started showing up in really profound ways, and ways that I couldn't connect with. The first one that happened, I had taken my dogs out to go to the bathroom at night. They went one direction. I turned around and I almost tripped over a dog that wasn't really there. And I was like, what is going on? And I heard, you'll know later when you need that. So I was doing a session with someone. At this point, I was doing life coaching, but not animal communication. And I ask her about the dog. I thought, oh no, this is it. I'm going to be found out I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I said, can you tell me about the black dog, about 40, 50 pounds, white tips on the ears and white on the chest? And it goes quiet. And I'm like, uh-oh, this is it. And she starts crying. And she goes, how is that possible? That dog died 14 years ago. Wow. I just got whole body chills there. And I said, I don't know, but your dog was in my backyard last night. And so we started having a conversation from that. And sure enough, right, like, it just took off my abilities. It was like the floodgates opened up. I could talk to just about anything at that point. And what was even more fascinating is Ruby started introducing me to other trees. And it was fascinating to hear the personalities and what they wanted to help me with, what they were excited with, what they were curious about. And it went on fast forward a couple of years later, the trees themselves took me directly under their tutelage. Like, I'm a big avid reader and, researcher and stuff. And they were like, nothing, you can't read anything about trees or the natural world. For 2 years, they did that to me. And they took me through a series of practices and exercises to connect and get information and have an expansive, experience. And it was fascinating when I came out of it and I started double checking what I was getting with research that was coming through, and from biologists who had crossed the line from mainstream into the mystical. It was all the same stuff. And I was blown away. So eventually, right, like, I started sharing this and teaching this, because it's great that I can talk to a tree or a rock or a dog or whatever. But to me, it's more important that the other humans remember they can do it too, because that's when the shift really happens for us.
So I've got chills. We've really started off with some wild synchronicity here. So get this. I mentioned that, I've had a synchronicity with that book, Anastasia, recently, so I'm working on a new project. I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life, and, probably the biggest spiritual breadcrumb story I've ever had. And I get, I haven't communicated with trees per se that I can say, or animals, or had, dead relatives at the end of my bed, like all the things I hear on the show from my awesome guests. What happens for me in a way that probably more than anyone else I've come across is the amount of these synchronicities and tie-ins and spiritual breadcrumbs. And it's happening a lot here right now. So I've got a new project called Industr.ee. Well, it's spelled T-R-E-E. The website is Industr.ee. And it's actually version 2 of Industr.ee. The first version was in 2009. It's like a music distribution platform. It was, like Spotify before Spotify meets MySpace, with its own currency. Everything had a tree name or theme on it. So my own currency, like before cryptocurrency or blockchain, was called Blooms. I would pay everyone out in blooms. And so I've been very divinely guided to bring Industr.ee back, and have been working on the plans to do that over the last 6 months. I happened to get this book, Anastasia. People told me about it, this magical story of this woman in the woods in Russia, and so I was flying. So I ended up getting this book, which is kind of hard to find, actually, and reading it just recently as I'm planning Industr.ee, not realizing that it's called the Ringing Cedars series. It's all about these trees that talk to this woman and call her and her ancestors forward to, receive all this cosmic energy. I highly recommend it, guys, if you want to check it out. And so I'm making names for I'm rebooting, a lot of my day is spent working on Industr.ee and getting it together, the new version that's going to use NFTs and share ownership of music and other art with fans. And, it's like, it's part 2, all these years later, my hero's journey, it's back, and I had so many crazy signs back then. So I was like, okay, another timeline not meant. And here we are now. And it's about, I'm going to be releasing it here in the coming, actually summer is the plan to release that website. So you guys can actually sign up to stay in the loop now at the Industr.ee website. But, so get this. So as I'm putting together all the naming conventions again, supporters, I'm calling, artists or branches. Roots are all the people who support and help to promote in certain things. And so I'm putting together, the different names. And I'm like, okay, there's like cedars that, help to promote and referrals and things like that. And then I was like, oh, we're going to be using people's playlists to get on playlists as one of the things. And I'm like, oh, I'll call those ringers. And then I'm like, hold on, this is like ringing cedars is like, just like the book I just read. Right. And so get this, the first artist that I'm releasing, I've decided on when Industr.ee, the website launches here in a few months, we're releasing Industr.ee founders NFTs, which have like, sort of special access, and it's found like founders NFTs. And then my first music artist, guess what her name is?
What?
Just guess. If you had
Willow.
to guess a name. Close. What is a name that would be closer to your story? Ruby.
Oh my goodness.
I'm literally the first artist who's actually going to be here in a couple days as of this recording to perform a show. I run a co-living space, and she's going to be in town here in a few days and be at my place. But yeah, the first artist on Industr.ee is named Ruby.
That's crazy. I just had total body chills.
It's crazy, right? You can't make this stuff up. So, anywho, I didn't want to steal your thunder there, but I had to bring that story forward because it's like I'm getting full chills as you're talking about this. Like, are you kidding? Like, it's so wild.
Right? Like, you can't script this stuff. That's the thing.
Can't. No, you really can't. So, yeah. Anyway, let's go. Let's move on. So, I'm very curious when you talk about us being, we are nature. And I think that's a really important point, that it's super easy for people to forget that, this isn't some other thing that is separate from us. We've sort of built up all these walls to make it seem that way sometimes, but we are, some would say the pinnacle of nature. Others would say not, I'm sure. But, that's open for debate. But yeah, what do you mean when you say we are nature?
Well, it's exactly that piece about us remembering that we're nature. I always like to say, once we moved out of the woods, we forgot, like little by little, that amnesia set in, and we set up more and more synthetic environments. And, we're under a barrage of all the EMFs and all the waves and stuff that are coming that really do scramble those signals. And so the further we are disconnected from the earth, right, the more the forgetfulness, the more the amnesia is there. But we are, these infinite beings in these physical bodies that are wired energetically and physically for these interactions with the natural realm. And there's a remembrance that happens just when we go outside, right? Like without even engaging intentionally or consciously, just by being outside in the natural realm, we are physiologically receiving those negative ions that are feeding our body at a cellular level that helps us remember balance. And then when we couple that conscious intent, which is our superpower, really, it expands that and opens up those possibilities so much more. And that's what I talk about in the book, is all of the energetics. But then how do we do that, right? Like, what's the point of just hearing somebody else's story? It's great. Spiritual storytelling is phenomenal, but there's that aspect of what's in it for me, right? Like, how do I do that? And that's what I really want people to remember is you can already do this. We've just forgotten. And just like, there are people who are virtuosos, say at the piano, and they just inherently can do it, but anybody can sit down and learn how to play the piano. Then
Yeah.
wherever you want to take it is up to you. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with the natural realm.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that's such an important point with all the intuitive, sort of mystical abilities. It's just like any other muscle. It needs to be worked out. We've all had those moments of like, wow, I just like thought of so-and-so and their phone rang. Okay. Like, anyone, of course, I always say anyone can shoot a basket. Not everyone was born to be LeBron James, maybe, but
Yes.
but if you practice, you're going to get better. Right. And so, we might not all end up as Tyler Henry or, but then again, it's like, if you set your intention, it's like my friend Julie Ryan, she talks about that. She just like set her, like, I am going to harness these gifts. And now she's got them all, but it was like that, like you said, that intention is everything. It's like literally calling the forces of the universe to our aid. Like, okay, this is the path I'm going. Send me what I need. Right.
Yeah. And with humans, right? Like we have this stacking thing with our abilities, right? Until someone ran a 4-minute mile, no one had done that.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden people could do that.
Yep.
And that's always my hope as a teacher, right? I don't want you to just be a carbon copy of me. I want your unique signature. I want you to far surpass that, because that's how it works, right? With humans, with animals, with nature, we just expand on those possibilities. So it's important, especially at this key time on the planet, that more humans remember this, because we'll live very differently and we'll have very different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what are your sort of takeaways and hacks is a bad word, but techniques to help people? Obviously, going in nature, step one. Are there any for those who have never even thought or considered of connecting more deeply with nature on this level? How you would recommend that they begin to deepen their connection?
Yeah, the first thing to me has always been authenticity, right? Like I was saying with that story, I did it because I had an assignment to do, but I was so full of doubt and I was so self-conscious and nervous, and really nervous, like, what if this doesn't work, right? Like what might be wrong with me instead of what might be right. So the first thing is to be authentic, right? Bring it all with you wherever you're at in your life. If things are going great, if they're not going great, what's going on and how do you feel about it is the first piece, being authentic. The second piece is something so simple, again, that we dismiss, is our breath. The breath, that's the element of air. I mean, that in and of itself is phenomenal. That is sacred life force energy.
Yeah.
And when we engage it consciously, right? Like you can just be on autopilot, right? And you're breathing and stuff. I mean, it happens when we're sleeping. But as soon as you couple that life force energy with our conscious intent, all of a sudden we move from that headspace of strategizing and trying to figure things out. And it naturally drops us. Physiologically, this happens through slow rhythmic breathing, drops us into the heart space. Being dropped in the heart space is what activates the heart coherence. The heart coherence is what creates the bridge to that quantum field. That's where the action is. And it all starts with a breath. So I suggest to people, whether you can get outside or not, to start with being authentic and then dropping into your breath, and then buckle your seatbelt, right? That's
Yeah.
launching pad at that point.
Yeah. I love that. And can you explain what you mean when you say take it into your listening?
Yeah, people hear me say that all of the time. And it's that piece that we're inundated with so many other things and energies. And as energetic beings, right, we're these little energetic sponges and we pick up everything from everyone. And most of the time we assume it's ours, right? So we have an energy hit us or an emotion and we just assume it's ours because we already have a story, a really sad story that goes with that particular emotion, and we glom onto it. And we spend so much time trying to process other people's stuff instead of really discerning what's mine here. And so when you get hit with something, or you're in the middle of having been hit with a particular energy for a while, to stop and breathe and take it into your listening, right? Like, so you breathe, you drop into the heart space. Who does this belong to even? You can't ask a question without your subconscious mind going out and looking for an answer.
Yeah.
So just asking that engages the energy in a new way. And if it's not yours, you can let it go. You can send it back with consciousness. You don't even got to deal with it because we don't have time for all that other stuff. But if it is yours, right? Like we feel it, and I'll usually feel I call it my cosmic committee, tap me on the shoulder and like, yeah, it'd be nice if you could get rid of it, but that is yours. We do need you. There's a message here for you. And so we spend so much time dealing with all this other stuff, and we need to get to a space where we can come back to our center and tune in to our authentic voice, our soul voice. And when we're in nature, it makes it so much easier because we're being supported by all the natural realm. We're grounding and we're able to transmute, and we're being inundated and infused with high vibrations. And it makes it easier for us to see, oh, that doubt, that's not even mine. That's not even mine. And it makes it easier for us to then move forward. So anytime someone's struggling with doubt or self-confidence, get out into nature, because it's the quickest portal back to your true self and to remembering who you truly be.
Yeah, I love that. Who you truly be. I like that. So you've written in your series, Common Sentience. I love that name. You have 3 different sort of parts to the series. Can you kind of give us a high level of those?
Yeah, it's actually 2 parts. So Common Sentience is a bigger series. It's a 9-book series, and there's different authors, right? Dr. Stephen Farmer, William Henry, Neil Gaur, Trisha McCannon, and each of them talk about what I call different portals to the divine, right? Animals, meditation, angels, ancestors, ascension. So each book, it's like, what lights you up? That's the book you want to listen to. My book is the 3rd in the series, and each book has 3 parts to it. The first part is where the featured author is talking about the mystical in that realm, right? So for me, it's how does the mystical take shape in nature? So I go through, the elements, the trees, the rocks, landscapes, elementals. We really dive into each one and talk about the mechanics behind the energy, how it happens, why it happens, how we might perceive it as humans. And then the second part is a super fun part. It's the collaborative piece where other authors, other people share their true stories about amazing stories that took place in the natural realm. Because again, once you know it can happen, it opens up a possibility for you. And then the third part is me giving simple, grounded, practical exercises, experiences that everyone can go and do. And whether you're brand new to this or whether you've been doing it for, decades, we can hone, fine tune, and take our abilities and our connection to the next level. So the whole book is about remembering, because we're infinite beings. There's nothing to learn. It's about remembering in this density how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say it's about remembering, coming back together with these other extensions of ourselves, right?
Yes, that's it exactly. And that's what that tree is. That's what that rock is. That's what that mountain is. It's not a backdrop, a pretty backdrop. Those are our kin, right? Like that's our soul folk. And the more that we remember we're connected, our abilities increase, but the way we move through life completely changed.
Yeah, there is, I like to say there is no out there. Like literally everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself. And so, you start really not just like, that's a clever, like foo-foo kind of, woo-woo saying. No, that's the nature of the situation in which you find yourself, pun intended. So
that is the reality.
So, let's see here. Wow, what a cool What a cool journey, and what a cool thing to share. I know in the books there, you said there's quite a few stories. So I'd love to hear some of those. But maybe before we do that, I know for some people out there that's probably coming up as we talk about this. They're feeling excited. They're feeling it's kind of like, when something is true, we know it's like sounds true, feels true, is true. There's a part of us that knows this. And then you get that sort of excitement that comes along with it. Like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember that, cause can't really, like you said, we can't teach anything that everyone doesn't already know. It's a matter of remembering what we've forgotten. And, so let's say someone is hearing this, they're loving everything that they're hearing, and they're also in a high rise in New York City, no access to nature or virtually no, what do you say to that person?
Well, the one thing that I always think of when there are folks who are more urban bound, right, or concrete jungle bound, is I know it can feel like a wrongness, right? We're real quick as humans to be like, what's wrong here? This is what's wrong. But it actually is a rightness and a wonderfulness. And those folks who are living in those kinds of settings, you're actually being called to work much more on an energetic level, right? Like part of me thinks like maybe I'm in the preschool and that's why they put me in the middle of the forest, right? Where my teachers are right there all the time to remember.
Yeah, where do you put a lighthouse in the darkness, right?
Right, exactly. And so again, we know I love to hang out in that sweet spot where spirituality meets science. And not because I need science to believe in it, but it's so fun when there's a confirmation.
Agreed.
An acknowledgement, right? And proof. Our lower minds want that proof. And like I said, when we are visualizing something, our brain doesn't know the difference. And we've seen it with athletes, elite athletes, where they will visualize and it starts to create firings in the neural network that create a blueprint for them to then complete that task. So again, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a public speaker, whether you're someone who wants to connect with another being, be it a tree, a rock, an animal, another person, you can do that. You do it through the visualization, and you're engaging these energetic muscles and networks in a different way. And so when folks don't have easy access to nature, I've always been guided from nature to get them to remember, either go back to an experience when you were there, or we've got hours and hours of video of beautiful natural places. Pull up a picture of your favorite tree or a scene or whatever to connect you in quantumly to that. And there's nothing that you can't do, from that. I mean, even though I live here, we live in the Rocky Mountains, and actually overnight we just had snow. I'm looking at 3 inches of snow out there, and it was cold this morning. So I probably, a morning like that, I'm not going to go outside and hug a tree. I'm going to sit in the house with my tea and talk to the tree from my chair. But you can do that, right? And it's important that you have those pathways for the physical and for the non-physical. But the folks who don't have easy access, I feel like they are really being called to engage their other faculties, their other abilities. So again, it's not a wrongness. It's actually a huge wonderfulness.
It's, what comes up is I was with my son yesterday, and we were talking about, we live in Los Angeles, and we were talking about, before Los Angeles, we lived about an hour south of here, and, I've been here, going on 3 years now. And he was just sharing how much he feels like, I definitely feel more like LA native now. I see movies or other places or, and it's like, and we just got talking about, acclimating to a place. And I was like, and this subject kind of came up. It's like, you can't be somewhere that's not a vibrational match to you in some way, shape, or form. It's like, so if you're there because it's a vibrational match in some way, shape, or form. And therefore there's something there for you. Now, maybe after you get whatever lesson is necessary, you'll end up, right in the middle of the Rocky Mountains with Anna and, or on some tropical beach or in a jungle or who knows. Right. But when we resist something or label it as bad, we're missing the boat. We're missing understanding that it's all happening for our good and growth. And that includes being, like you said, if I'm meant to be able to, strengthen I'm supposed to strengthen my quantum connection to, nature. Well, okay, let's do that from a distance. Then that's a necessary way to train that muscle. But certainly we can see, if COVID's taught us anything, that there's a lot that can be done remotely that, I mean, the amount of intuitive friends I have whose business skyrocketed, because there's no limitation based off physicality. So it's, and speaking of science, we can see that with, where they've actually taken two entangled particles and put one in outer space and one here, and they do something to one and the other one instantly, is affected, instantaneously. And so it's like, oh, this quantum entanglement is a real thing.
Well, that piece about, again, so many things can be done remotely, right? And I love that we've had a physical experience of that. One of the stories in the book is called Grandfather Tree, by a woman named Florentine. And she already was an intuitive, right? She was already talking to animals. And she was in a session, and a tree invited her to go deeper. And she thought, even her, right, as expanded as she was, she thought, well, that's kind of weird. Like, how do you connect to a tree? And she went in and had a profound experience with this grandfather tree. And it opened her possibilities up even further. And she was someone who most people would have considered out there already.
Yeah.
And that's what I love, right? Like, this book is for people who are brand new to this concept, but all the way through to those of us who are looking to expand and up level and even open up more possibilities, because really our intuitive development cycle it's not linear, it's circular, and we keep coming back around, but with a different depth. So it allows us to, it's like having an ancient mystery school right there, right outside your door that you can connect in with and have these ancient secrets, these ancient processes revealed to us.
Yeah, I love that. It's like having a mystery school right outside your door. Very, very cool. And I'm curious. Couple things I'm thinking of right now. I don't know which to ask. I'll just throw them both at you. And
I know,
you
it's
can
like, which
decide
way
what
do
to
we
do
go?
with it.
There's so
I
many
know.
things.
I get too excited. So I have another friend that's been on this podcast multiple times, and she talks about her ability to connect. She goes up. She lives in Mount Shasta. Her name is Sandra Walter. You guys can go, to Positive Head and search old episodes. And by the way, why I'm saying that, just why I'm thinking of it, if you also want to hear the industry ongoing story that, I referenced earlier, you can also go to positivehead.com, search episode 1532 is that one. But anyway, so Sandra Walter would talk about going, she lives up in Mount Shasta. She's very intuitive, works multidimensionally, and, meditating for days on end. And of course, Shasta is supposed to be, I don't know if you probably know of it, like a portal in and of it itself, people say. And she talks about seeing entities like that are sort of other dimensions over, like a Sasquatch, for example. She shares in one of her stories. She's like, I believe it was like, I'm seeing like another layer, in a sense, which kind of made sense to me. It's like, oh, well, okay, maybe someone's seen something like that or whatever. Well, okay, evidence not being here would make sense if someone is perceiving multidimensionally and just, one phase shift over from, in our ascension process, these physical creatures are there. But if, where's the bones? Well, it's not technically here. This person was perceiving multidimensionally or another layer.
Or the creature, the entity was moving through dimensions.
Right. Exactly.
I live just in this sacred valley, and there are profound experiences from people that would never, they are not, there's not even a little bit of woo-woo in their tiny little finger, and they were seeing leprechauns, right? Like,
yeah. That's another, like, fairies. I had one experience in my life, and I haven't thought of this in years till right now. 2013 at Manifest Festival, I had an experience where I found this little fairy thing. I started seeing something in the sky that seemed like, oh my gosh, is that what this is? I've never seen it. To this day, I've never thought I've seen something multidimensionally. And in that moment, yeah, it's a whole story, but the moment I had doubt, it's like, you're not ready to see more, and it stopped.
Yes.
And it was like,
it's that
wow.
Believing is seeing. Yeah.
And I've never had anything like it since. I haven't thought of it till right now. And so, and with Sandra, I remember her sharing, and she's been on the podcast multiple times, this Sasquatch showing up when someone showed up to her campsite, and it kind of spooked her a little. They parked right near there, and all of a sudden there was this Sasquatch there, and then they took off. Like she thinks they saw it too, and it like spooked them and kind of protected her in a sense, and which was really an interesting perception. But in her case, she takes no plant medicine. She's like completely sober. Like, it's not like she's out there, using something to help her maybe see more. But so curious what you think about that whole thing, which you've just touched on a little bit. And then also there's one of my favorite all-time books is a book called Oneness by a woman named Rasha. It's supposedly channel material. I view it as like the handbook for ascension. Like, here's the things you can accept as you go through this process of ascending and expanding your awareness. And she talks about how one of the things that's going to happen is we're going to start finding new elements and new creatures and new things that have always been there, just slightly shifted over from the physical dimension, as the veil kind of blends between this and the beyond. It's like we're ascending, and therefore new things are kind of popping into our new reality. And I think that's a really interesting concept as well.
Well, and I feel like it's been happening all along, right? Like all along, those of us who've been on the path have been leaning into practices that are just now being confirmed by science in one way or another about these kinds of experiences. And all of my teachers have been very clear in don't make up your mind on anything, right? There's still so much more to be revealed. Sure. And it's like that moment, with the elementals that you had, where as soon as the doubt was there,
yep,
it disappeared, right? Like the doorway, the door was closed. Yep. And that's the piece, right? It's not seeing is believing, it's believing is seeing. As soon as we make that shift, then we open up to more possibilities. And again, you don't have to believe all of it, but you have to lean into the possibility. And you can be honest, like, I kind of think it's all crazy. And I think that everyone who was doing that had to have plant medicine. Otherwise, how are you going to see interdimensionally? And so you can be honest about that and still lean into the possibility, right? Like the biggest thing is the authenticity. Bring it all to it, because those things that are up aren't up to trip you up or because you suck or anything like that. They're up for healing, so that you can move on to the next piece. So it doesn't require nature, and the mysticism in nature does not require your belief. It doesn't require it at all. But if you'll just lean in a little bit and say, well, let's see what might happen. That's the sweet spot. And that's where everyday people, who don't spend hours and hours in meditation can experience this. Now, spending more time in meditation absolutely assists you in having these experiences because you already have a well-worn path into it, but it's not required. Really, the biggest thing is your curiosity and leaning into that possibility.
Yeah, I love that. That makes so much sense. So I'd love to hear, you've referenced a few stories. We love to get story time on the show. I always ask for stories of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal stories. So I'd love to, any story or stories that you care, a few examples, of how nature is communicating with others and people were helped, et cetera.
Well, the one that's coming to mind is my story about the medicine wheel. And what it talks to is the more we enter into that relationship, right, with nature, it's like an intimate relationship where, just like with a human, the more time you spend together, the more is revealed, right? The closer you get.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I had already been, doing this kind of work for not quite a decade, but probably pretty close. And I moved to a new place, and I had been at that place already for probably a year or two. And so I knew every square inch, right, of the woods, of the forest, of the land. And I had entered into some deeper learning about the rock beings, right, the stone beings. And I was practicing some rock sitting, right, where you sit on a rock, your tailbone is connected to the rock, and it plugs you in to those harmonics, to those frequencies, to that resonance that's going out. And it's a great way to have information shared, right? Where you can tap in, go to your mystery school. So I had been spending that week with different rocks and really listening in and getting to know their personalities. And I had just finished kind of that session, and I was just walking, just meditative walking through an area that I'd been through. I don't even know how many times, right? Like, oh my gosh, but I knew the trees and all of that. And there's this little clearing, and I come to the clearing, and all of a sudden I see like a holographic overlay, a medicine wheel, like an ancient medicine wheel. And I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, and I'm like, but it's not in the physical, right? I'm seeing it as an overlay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this spot wants to be a medicine wheel. Of course it wants to be a medicine wheel. This is so great. So I get my partner, and I tell him, and he's all excited, and we get into a conscious creation, talking to the stones. We live in the Rocky Mountains, so it's very easy to find rocks
Yeah.
that we don't have to
Shortage
disturb
of
the earth.
personalities.
Yeah, right. Who wants to work with us on this? This is great. So we've collected wheelbarrows full of rocks, to create this medicine wheel. And we go to lay down the 4 directional stones, right? That's kind of the corner piece of a medicine wheel. And as we go to lay them down, we look and we notice there are already 4 directional stones embedded into the ground. We got our compasses out, and each one was within a few degrees, 1 to 3 degrees. And I mean, like, immediately,
Wow.
I was like, my translation was incorrect. This doesn't want to be a medicine wheel. This was already a medicine wheel. And the
Wow.
history of this area, we live up against a national forest, which we know there's been no human settlement in this area, right? Like permanent, but it has been like a nomadic corridor for different tribes that would come through, because there's natural hot springs not too far away. So it was a great wintering kind of spot, great hunting. And that we've had all sorts of other signs of indigenous folks coming through. So we knew we were dealing with something very, very different on another level. And again, that piece about having it revealed, right? Had I not been doing that stone sitting and really calibrating my field to that resonance of the rocks, because rocks can have information imprinted onto them. When I was ready and I was open, nature showed it to me. The wisdom keepers of that area said, yeah, you can be trusted. Let's show this to you. And so we were able to reactivate that wheel. And of course, we've had profound experiences all the way to when I was asked by the publisher to include that story, because I had told it to her in a meeting. And I said, I don't know if I can tell that story. That's not necessarily my story to tell. That was they kept that secret for a long time.
Yeah.
So I went out to do ceremony to ask permission. And of course, right, like, it's amazing. So I'm out there, I have a Great Dane, and he walks the wheel with me. It's pretty fun. And no leash or anything. He knows to go to each cornerstone and stand there. And I call it Wonder Twin powers, because, I'm a kid from the 80s, and I grew up on
I
that.
remember
So
them
I'm
well.
like, Wonder Twin powers activate. And then I go into my invocations. But we're standing there, and I look out, and there's deer standing not too far away from where we're at. And the dog doesn't take off, right? Like, deer are fun to chase, and he doesn't. He stays right put. And deer are symbolic of this luring to new adventures and a returning to traditional ways. So the first thing I got was, okay, this could be a yes. Let's see. So I finish the whole ceremony, and I'm in meditation, and I'm just sitting there. And this Clark nutcracker, it's a bird, and it comes and it flies right across the wheel. And it goes from the north side, which is the ancestors and the element of earth, to the south side, which is fire and full expression. And the Nutcracker itself is known for hiding like 80,000 seeds, but 2 to 3 at a time, and then being able magically to find them all later for nourishment. And as soon as I got this wheel is one of those seeds that was put away and cached a long time ago, and now it's here for our nourishment now. And so I'm totally vibrating up and down right now and at that moment, and I knew I had permission to share. It's time, right? And it blew me away, and it fits with, right? I've worked with and been in communication with elders in many different tribes, and it's changed, right? Like a decade or more ago, it was about keeping things secret. But that was because every time it was shared, it got destroyed, it got eradicated. And so it had to go underground to be able to keep it. But the elders of indigenous tribes around the world are realizing the humans have to remember this now. This is our opportunity. If we don't remember this connection, we might miss the boat.
Yeah.
And so I felt so honored to be able to share that story and to have the permission to share that story. And again, like, who am I, right? Like, I'm so honored that to even have had those experiences and to remind others, we can all have these experiences. This is supposed to be part of our blueprint while we're here. We've just forgotten.
Yeah. What an inspiring story. Have you come across any stories of, I remember another story. This I recounted from my former partner Anna. She had heard at an event a woman, and I don't. Maybe it was the same tree thing. I think it might have been. Now that I think about it, where they were talking about this very topic and connecting with trees and nature in general and healing that can happen. And I remember a story that she shared from that workshop that I thought was fascinating. A woman who claimed, it might even have been the woman teaching the workshop, said that she had some real serious physical ailments and issues. And she was instructed in meditation or I can't remember the exact details of the story. But it could have been even through communication with the tree. Don't quite recall, but somehow she was instructed to go to a particular spot, that was nowhere near where she was at in the ocean, and swim in this spot, and that whales would be there, and a whale would emit frequencies that would help to heal these serious physical ailments. And she did it. Like, okay, I'm going to go to Hawaii and whatever it was. And sure enough, a whale is there and is swimming around her. And she's miraculously healed, just like she was kind of told. That's a pretty wild story, right? Can't verify it or anything, but
yell, cue the whale.
Yeah. Right. So I'm curious if you've come across any stories that sort of dramatic with healing.
Absolutely. There's a story, again, the tree people really came out in force. We've got like 30 stories in here, and there's just a lot around trees, and they're so connected to us as humans. And this man had been in some ceremonies, right? Like some vision questing ceremonies. And he had a physical issue going on with his shoulder for quite a long time. And it was really starting to get quite debilitating. Mm-hmm. And he came out of the ceremony and he was drawn to this tree. And I can't remember what kind of tree it was. I believe this was down in South America. And he was drawn to go put his arms around the tree. And he said the moment he put his arms around the tree, like whoosh, this huge like flush of energy came through, so much so that he couldn't move his arms off the tree. He was like, static, stuck to the tree. And he stayed like that for, he said it felt like forever, but it was probably just moments. And then when he was released, like he fell off the tree, like he was being held, and he laid there and he wasn't quite sure what exactly had happened. And so he was just trying to pull himself together. And there were two people. One of them was one of the elders who was nearby. And he asked them, what just happened? And they said, when you were attached to the tree, this black mass came off of you and went up into the air.
Wow.
And he, all of a sudden he goes, oh my gosh. And then he remembers his shoulder and he's got no pain in it. And the pain never returns. To me, that was like so dramatic, because a lot of times our healing stories aren't that dramatic, you know, lightning bolts and things like that. But he absolutely experienced a true physical healing simply by following the nudges, because he could have said, you know what, I've been in ceremony all day. All I want to do is go eat some granola and lay down, you know, whatever it was. But he was like, okay, I got a little bit more in me. But how often do we ignore those nudges that could be profoundly life-changing for us? Because whatever comes up for us.
Yeah. Wow. What a cool story, and what a cool conversation. This is just so inspiring, and I'm definitely inspired to get out in nature more, for sure. So, you know, as we sort of wind down here, what is the best way for people that are wanting to connect with you and you continue to follow your work? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you know, the first thing, of course, I would say is get the book, right? Nature Divine Experiences with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscapes. Anywhere you buy books, you're going to be able to find that. The other way, of course, would be my website, intentiontraining.com. That's where I've got all my courses listed, my appearances. You can be on my mailing list to keep up with what's going on, the different things like this that I share. The main thing is, of course, moving these stories, these conversations from hushed one-off conversations, right? Like so often people start like, you're not going to believe this. And then they stop and they're like, well, maybe you will, but you know, other people aren't going to believe this. We want to move it from that out there mystical to the mainstream. Because again, the more of us that remember we can have this, we're going to have these experiences and even more. But we got to get that critical mass into the space where we're vibrating at that frequency. So everything you can do, you know, to raise your vibration, to connect with the natural realm is going to cause this remembrance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the 4-minute mile, right? It's like if I make any achievement, it is ripples out across, you know, the quantum connection that we all experience, whether we see it or not. You know, even thinking of animals like the 100th monkey. I'm sure you've heard
I was
like
just
the 100th.
thinking that.
Yeah. Where one, I think he was like, you know, on an island supposedly, and these particular types of monkeys, one started like learning to wash off the sweet potato before he ate it, and then the other saw and learned and did the same thing, and then they supposedly in the 70s observed another group of these same types of monkeys that were an island away, so they couldn't swim to each other or anything. It was far away. Started doing the same thing at the same time. So pretty interesting when you start realizing like this information is shared collectively, you know, between us and our fellow man and woman and beyond. So
through the non-physical, right? And it's the upside too of epigenetics, right? Like we think about all the low vibrational things that we get through epigenetics, but this, like I think back, you know, my family on my father's side is from Guatemala, and we've got Mayan ancestry there, but they've also been heavily converted to Christianity. So there was no talk about my great grandmother, who was a seer, a big time seer, and you know, did readings for folks. And I've learned how to connect to her through the network, through the non-physical network, so that I can, you know, be tutored by her and remember these things that are already in my DNA to be able to do it just through my family association. And then how can I help other people remember theirs?
Wow. So inspiring. Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your wisdom and insights. I do have one final question for you, and it is this. My cliche closer, I like to call it. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Ana Maria Vasquez?
Love. It's all love. There's nothing else. It's all love. Anything else is fear. And fear is just a call for love. All there is love.
Yes, I love that.
I love the love.
Thank you all for tuning your beautiful brainwaves in and incredible hearts. Thank you again, Anna. And it seems appropriate to sign off on today's episode with sharing a song by the lovely Ruby Chase called Let Me Be Medicine. Hope you guys enjoy. Until next time, journey well. Also, before we cue up today's song, as a quick reminder, don't forget to download the Golden Key audio or ebook as my free gift to you at goldenkey.gift using the Golden Key code POSITIVEHEAD. And please, if you enjoy my gift, leave a positive review on Amazon so others can unlock their lives with the help of the Golden Key as well.
Let me be medicine, just what you're calling in. Honey on the heart, fresh start. This is where it all begins. Let me be medicine. Let me get out of the way so it can be enough space for the healing. Soothe your spirit with a melody as the remedy. Let me be medicine, just what you're calling in. Honey on the heart, fresh start. This is where it all begins. Let me be medicine. Listen, what it did teach you. Trust you're strong enough to break through. It's in our nature to thrive. What will it take for you to arrive? Let me be medicine, just what